My name is Sutton, I am 27 years old, and I will never forget the smell of that Friday night. It was a thick, cloying mixture of expensive beeswax candles, roasted duck, and the heavy humidity of the New Orleans Garden District seeping through the old window frames. It was the smell of money. Specifically, it was the smell of my money, burning away to keep up an illusion that should have died 8 years ago. We were seated at the long mahogany dining table, a piece of furniture that cost more than my first car. My father, Richard, sat at the head, swirling a glass of red wine that retailed for $200 a bottle. He looked every inch the distinguished Southern patriarch, with his silver hair perfectly coiffed and his linen suit crisp and white. To his right was my mother, Deborah, smiling that vacant, practiced smile she used whenever the conversation turned to things she didn't understand but knew were expensive. And then there were the stars of the show. My older brother, Barrett, 31 years old and radiating the unearned confidence of a man who has never faced a real consequence in his life. Next to him sat Tinsley, my 26-year-old sister-in-law. She was glowing, quite literally, thanks to a facial treatment she had charged to the family account earlier that day, costing $400. She was tapping away on her phone, ignoring the meal, undoubtedly posting a photo of the table setting to her thousands of followers with a caption about blessed lives and family traditions. I sat at the far end of the table, in the spot usually reserved for guests or children. I was neither, yet I was both. I was the silent engine keeping this ship afloat, the invisible mechanic down in the grease and grime while they danced on the deck. I had just closed a deal that afternoon worth 7 figures for my company, Aegis Dynamics, but nobody here knew that. To them, I was just Sutton, the quiet daughter who worked a boring remote IT support job and helped fix the Wi-Fi when it went down. "This duck is dry," Barrett announced, breaking the silence. He didn't look at Mom, he just tossed his fork onto the china with a clatter. "Did you use the new convection oven I told you to buy? The one with the steam injection?" Mom flinched, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "I tried, honey. The settings are so complicated. I thought I followed the manual." "It's not complicated, Mom," Barrett sighed, rolling his eyes at Tinsley, who didn't look up from her screen. "It's just technology. Sutton, you need to go over the settings with her again. It is embarrassing that we have a $10,000 oven and can't even get a decent roast out of it." I looked up from my plate. I hadn't taken a bite yet. "I can look at it later," I said, my voice low. "But the manual is also available online if you want to check it, Barrett." Barrett scoffed. "That is why you are here, isn't it? Tech support." Dad chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that used to make me feel safe when I was a child. Now, it just sounded like compromise. Now, son. Let Sutton eat. She has had a long week fixing, whatever it is she fixes." "Printers?" "Servers, Dad," I corrected automatically, though I knew it didn't matter. "I manage network security protocols." Right. "Computers," Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Anyway, Barrett, tell us about the funding round. How are the investors?" Barrett straightened up, puffing out his chest. This was his favorite topic. Himself. "It is in the bag, Dad. We are looking at a series of close next week. $90 million. Post-money valuation is going to be through the roof. We are going to be the next unicorns of the cybersecurity world." I took a sip of water to hide the grimace. I knew his startup. I knew his product. And I knew for a fact that without the encryption module I had secretly written for him a year ago, his revolutionary AI firewall was nothing more than a pretty user interface wrapped around basic open source code. "That is wonderful, darling." Mom clapped her hands. "Does this mean we can look at that vacation home in Aspen again? The one with the heated driveway?" "Absolutely," Barrett grinned. "In fact, Tinsley has already been picking out furniture." Tinsley finally looked up, her eyes bright with greed. "Oh, it is going to be gorgeous. I found this interior designer from Miami. She is expensive, but you have to spend money to look like money, right, Sutton?" She shot a smirk in my direction. You should ask her for tips. That hoodie you are wearing is tragic. I looked down at my simple gray hoodie. It was cashmere and cost $600, but it didn't have a giant logo on it, so to Tinsley, it was trash. I'm comfortable, I said simply. Comfort is for people who have given up, Tinsley stated, turning back to her phone. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on my chest. I had spent 8 years paying for this house, that wine, that oven, and those phones. I had spent 8 years being the safety net they walked all over. I told myself it was for family. I told myself it was because I loved them. But tonight, listening to Barrett brag about money he hadn't earned and seeing Dad drink wine he hadn't bought, something inside me felt brittle. Like a wire pulled too tight, ready to snap. Dessert was a raspberry coulis that Mom had bought from a bakery across town because Tinsley mentioned craving it 3 days ago. As we ate, the atmosphere shifted. Barrett stopped bragging and started looking nervous. He kept glancing at Tinsley, who gave him a subtle nod. So, Barrett started, clearing his throat. There is one small thing we need to handle before the closing party next week. Just a bit of housekeeping. I felt a prickle of warning on the back of my neck. What kind of housekeeping? I asked. Barrett reached under the table and pulled out a leather folio. He slid it across the white tablecloth toward me. It stopped right next to my water glass. Just some technical paperwork, Sutton. The investors are being super anal about the due diligence. You know how lawyers are. They want a clear chain of title for every line of code in the stack. I didn't touch the folder yet. I thought you said your team wrote the code, Barrett. We did. We absolutely did, he said too quickly. But remember that weekend last year when you helped me with the encryption module? The core kernel? Since you touched it, the lawyers want a signature from you just waiving any claim. It is standard stuff. Consultant waiver. Tinsley chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. It is just a formality, Sutton. Sign it so your brother can get his funding. Don't be difficult. I opened the folder. It wasn't a standard consultant waiver. I read legal documents for a living. I dealt with sharks in suits every day. This wasn't a waiver, it was a robbery. The document was titled Confirmatory Assignment of Intellectual Property. Clause 47 caught my eye immediately. It stated that I, the undersigned, hereby assigned all rights, patents, and future derivatives of the Sentinel encryption protocol to Barrett's company, irrevocably and in perpetuity, for the sum of $1. My blood ran cold. The Sentinel protocol wasn't just some code I wrote over a weekend. It was the foundation of my own company, Aegis. I had let Barrett use a stripped-down version of it because he was my brother and he was desperate, but I never gave him ownership. If I signed this, I wouldn't just be giving him a module, I would be handing him the keys to my entire life's work. I would be giving him the patent that made my company worth billions. This assigns ownership, Barrett, I said, keeping my voice steady. This isn't a waiver. This says you own the code I wrote. So what? Barrett snapped, his nice guy mask slipping. It is part of my platform. I built the company. I did the pitch meetings. You just typed some lines on a screen. You don't even use it. I do use it, I said. And even if I didn't, it is mine. You are asking me to sign over intellectual property worth a lot. For $1. Oh my God, here we go, Tinsley groaned, dropping her spoon. Everything has to be a transaction with you. Can't you just support your family for once? Support? I looked at her, then at the $200 wine bottle, then at the walls of the house I paid the mortgage on. I support this family every single day. You pay a few bills, Sutton. Big deal, Barrett sneered. I am about to bring in $90 million. Real money. Wealth. Not the scraps you make fixing servers. But I can't close the deal unless you sign that paper. The lead investor insisted on it because they found your digital signature in the metadata. Then tell them you stole it, I said calmly. Tell them you didn't write the core product. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. That is enough, Sutton. Stop trying to sabotage your brother. He has worked hard for this. He hasn't worked for any of it, Dad. I argued, my voice rising for the first time. He took my code, he is taking your praise, and now he wants to take my legal rights. I am not signing it. I closed the folder and pushed it back toward him. The silence that followed was absolute. Barrett stared at the folder, his face turning a dark, ugly shade of red. He looked at Tinsley, who was glaring at me with pure venom. Then he looked back at me, his eyes bulging. You are not signing it? He whispered. No, I said. Barrett stood up so fast his chair tipped over backward and crashed onto the hardwood floor. He leaned over the table, pointing a shaking finger in my face. You listen to me, you selfish little brat, Barrett screamed, spit flying from his mouth. This is my shot. This is the family's future. You are going to sign that paper right now, or so help me God. Or what, Barrett? I asked, looking him dead in the eye. What are you going to do? He looked around wildly, searching for a weapon, a threat, anything. Then, he reverted to the only power dynamic he understood. The one from our childhood. You are grounded, he bellowed. You are grounded until you apologize to your sister-in-law and sign that paper. You are not leaving this house. You are not going anywhere. You will sit in your room and think about how selfish you are until you are ready to do the right thing. I stared at him. I was 27 years old. I was the CEO of a multinational corporation. I owned real estate in 3 countries. And my 31-year-old brother was grounding me. I waited for my parents to step in. I waited for Dad to tell Barrett to sit down and stop being ridiculous. I waited for Mom to say that you can't ground a grown woman who pays for the roof over your head. Instead, Dad started to laugh. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a mocking one. You heard your brother, Sutton, Dad said, wiping a tear from his eye. Go to your room. Maybe a little time out will teach you some respect. You have been getting too big for your britches lately anyway. Mom nodded, taking a sip of wine. Just sign the paper, honey. Don't ruin the weekend. Do as you are told. Tinsley smirked, picking up her spoon again. Maybe we should take away her phone, too, Barrett? Like we do with the kids? That was the moment. That was the exact second the cable snapped. For 8 years, I had convinced myself they were just bad with money. That they were helpless. That they needed me. I thought I was the savior. But looking at their faces, the contempt in Barrett's eyes, the amusement in Dad's, the indifference in Mom's, I realized I wasn't the savior. I was the servant. They didn't love me. They loved the lifestyle I provided, but they despised the fact that it came from me. They needed to humiliate me to feel better about taking my money. Grounding me wasn't a punishment, it was a reassertion of dominance. They wanted to remind me that no matter how much I paid, I was still the child, and they were the masters. My face burned, not with shame, but with a cold, clarifying rage. The fog in my brain lifted. I saw the room for what it was, a stage set for a play I no longer wanted to be in. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I didn't list the thousands of dollars I had transferred to their accounts that month. I just stood up. All right, I said softly. Barrett blinked, confused by my sudden surrender. All right, what? All right, I repeated. I will go to my room. Dad laughed again. See? She just needs a firm hand. Good job, son. And the paper? Barrett demanded, tapping the folder. I will think about it, I lied. I need to cool down first. You have until morning, Barrett threatened, righting his chair. If that signature isn't on there by breakfast, I am cutting off the Wi-Fi. Let's see how you do your little IT job without internet. The irony was so sharp it almost cut me. He was going to cut off the internet I paid for, to stop me from doing the job that paid for the internet. Understood, I said. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I could hear them talking as I climbed the stairs. She will fold, Tinsley said. She always folds. She is desperate for us to like her. I know, Barrett replied, his mouth full of duck. She is weak. I reached the top of the stairs and walked down the hall to my bedroom. It was the smallest room in the house, the old nursery. I closed the door and locked it. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't throw myself on the bed and weep. I walked straight to my closet. I didn't pull out a suitcase. I pulled out my secure server bag. I wasn't packing clothes. I could buy clothes. I was packing my life. I took my encrypted hard drives, my physical security keys, and the folder containing my birth certificate and passport. I took the framed photo of my grandmother, the only person in this family who had ever actually loved me, and wrapped it in a t-shirt. I checked my watch. It was 8:45 in the evening. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. It wasn't the clunky company-issued Dell they thought I used. It was a custom-built machine worth $5,000 with satellite uplink capabilities. I logged into the family banking portal. You want to ground me? I whispered to the empty room. Fine. Let's see how well you fly without wings. I worked in silence for 3 hours. The house went quiet around 11 o'clock. I heard Barrett and Tinsley go into the master suite, the one I had renovated for my parents, which Barrett had commandeered last year. I heard Dad snoring from the guest room. At 1:47 in the morning, I was ready. On my screen was a dashboard I had built years ago to manage the family office, as I jokingly called it. It connected to every automated payment, every credit card, every utility account, and every subscription service linked to the Walsh family name. I hovered my mouse over the Terminate Alt button. A small part of me hesitated. The voice of the little girl who just wanted her daddy to be proud of her whispered, "If you do this, there is no going back. They will hate you forever." Then I remembered the laughter. I remembered Dad chuckling while Barrett screamed at me. I remembered Tinsley's smirk. "They already hate you," the adult voice in my head answered. "They just love your utility." I clicked the mouse. The screen flashed red, then green. Command executed. One by one, the status lights on the dashboard turned from active to cancelled or suspended. The American Express Platinum card? Cancelled. The mortgage autodraft? Stopped. The lease payments on Tinsley's Range Rover and Dad's Mercedes? Revoked. The country club membership? Terminated. The electricity, water, gas, and high-speed fiber internet? Scheduled for disconnection at the end of the billing cycle, which, conveniently, was Monday. I closed the laptop and slipped it into my bag. I took one last look around the room. I left the wardrobe full of clothes. I left the books on the shelf. I left the bed perfectly made. I wanted them to see how little of me was actually here. I unlocked the bedroom door and crept into the hallway. The floorboards creaked, but nobody stirred. The wine had done its job. I walked down the grand staircase, my hand trailing on the banister I had paid to have refinished 2 years ago. In the kitchen, the dishwasher was humming, another appliance I had bought. I placed my house key on the marble island, right next to the fruit bowl. I didn't write a note. Notes are for people who want to be found, or who want the last word. I didn't need the last word. My absence would be loud enough. I slipped out the back door into the humid night air. The crickets were chirping, a deafening chorus in the silence of the garden. My car was parked in the driveway, tucked behind Tinsley's massive white SUV. My car was a 2012 Honda Civic with a dent in the rear bumper and fading paint. It was the only thing I owned that they hadn't tried to upgrade, because they were ashamed of it. They made me park it in the back so the neighbors wouldn't see. I loved that car. It was the only honest thing in this zip code. I threw my bag into the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. The engine started with a reliable purr. I didn't turn on the headlights until I was down the street. I drove through the sleeping garden district, past the mansions and the oak trees. I passed the security patrol car, a service I also paid for, and gave a little wave. I wasn't going far. My real home, my penthouse in the warehouse district, was only 12 minutes away. But as I merged onto the highway, crossing the invisible line between their world and mine, I felt a physical weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't grounded. I was launching. To understand why I stayed for 8 years, you have to understand the fear. It was 2017. I was 19 years old, a sophomore in college studying computer science on a partial scholarship. I came home for spring break to find the house dark. Not just lights off dark, but empty feeling dark. I found Dad in the kitchen, sitting in the dark, drinking cheap whiskey. He was crying. I had never seen my father cry. He was a man of steel, a builder, a provider. Seeing him broken like that shattered my world. "It is gone, Sutton," he had choked out. "Everything. The business, the accounts, the lines of credit. The bank called the loans. They are coming for the house next week." The recession had hit Louisiana late but hard. Dad's construction supply business had been leveraged to the hilt. He had been borrowing from Peter to pay Paul for years, keeping up appearances, hoping the market would turn. It didn't turn. I remember the panic that seized me. This house was our identity. Being a Walsh meant living in the Garden District. If we lost this, who were we? "Don't worry, Dad," I had said, hugging his shaking shoulders. "We will figure it out." "There is nothing to figure out," he sobbed. "I need $6,000 just to stop the foreclosure process." "I don't have 600. I went back to my dorm room that night and stared at my computer screen. I wasn't just a student. I was talented. Dangerous, even. I had been poking around the edges of the internet since I was 12. I knew about bug bounties, programs where major tech companies paid hackers to find vulnerabilities in their systems. I had found a few before but never submitted them because I was afraid of getting in trouble. That night, fear of the bank outweighed fear of the tech giants. I spent 48 hours straight scanning the code of a major social media platform. My eyes burned, my fingers cramped, but I found it. A critical vulnerability in their user data protection layer. A backdoor that could have leaked millions of accounts. I wrote up the report, anonymized my identity under the handle White Knight, and submitted it. 3 days later, I got a response. They verified the bug. The payout was $15,000. I transferred $6,000 to Dad's account immediately. I told him I had saved it from my work-study job and some freelance tutoring. It was a ridiculous lie, nobody makes that kind of money tutoring, but he didn't question it. He didn't want to know. He just wanted the money. "It is a miracle," he had said, wiping his eyes. "You are a good girl, Sutton." That praise was the drug. I was hooked. Once I started, I couldn't stop. The $15,000 fixed the immediate crisis, but the hole in the family finances was a bottomless pit. The mortgage was $4,800 a month. The utility bills were astronomical. And Dad was too proud to get a regular job. He kept trying to launch consulting ventures that went nowhere. So, I kept hacking. I moved from social media sites to banking infrastructure, always operating in the gray hat zone, legally ambiguous, but morally justifiable. I became a ghost in the machine. By the time I was 20, I was making $20,000 a month. I paid the mortgage. I paid the car notes. When the roof needed replacing, $28,000 appeared in the contractor's account. Dad never asked. Mom never asked. They developed a convenient blindness. If they didn't ask, they didn't have to acknowledge that their 19-year-old daughter was the head of the household. They could keep pretending Dad was the patriarch and I was just the helpful child. I dropped out of college in my junior year. I told them I got a full-time job doing remote IT support for a Fortune 500 company. That is nice, dear, Mom had said. Does it offer dental? She didn't ask about the salary. She didn't ask why I was home all day. In reality, I had incorporated Aegis dynamics. I wasn't just finding bugs anymore, I was building shields. I developed a proprietary algorithm that could predict cyber attacks before they happened using behavioral heuristics. I hired my first employee, Declan, a brilliant network engineer I met on a forum. We worked out of a shared workspace in the warehouse district. You need to tell them, Sutton, Declan told me one day, watching me pay my parents' credit card bill. You are building an empire, and they treat you like a Geek Squad employee. I can't, I replied. If I tell them I have millions, they will just spend millions. If they think I make a decent salary, they will limit their spending. I was so naive. They didn't limit their spending. They just waited for an excuse to spend more. Then came Tinsley. 4 years ago, Barrett met her at a bar. She was a lifestyle influencer with 5,000 followers and a taste for champagne on a beer budget. When she saw our house, she saw a backdrop for her content. She saw a gold mine. 6 months later, they were engaged. Tinsley wanted a destination wedding in Jamaica. Cost, $90,000. We can't afford that, Dad had whispered to me in the kitchen. But we can't say no. It would be humiliating. I paid for it. I told them I got a performance bonus at work. Little sis coming through again. Barrett had grinned, slapping me on the back. He didn't say thank you. He just took it as his due. After the wedding, it got worse. Tinsley needed a new car because the old sedan didn't fit her brand. I bought the Range Rover. Then came the vacations. The country club dues. The designer handbags. I watched them post photos of these things, tagging them #blessed, #hardwork, #family wealth. I felt a sickness growing in my stomach. I wasn't buying their safety anymore, I was funding their delusion. I was paying for them to love me, but the more I paid, the less they respected me. I became a utility. You don't thank your toaster for making toast, you just expect it to work. And when it doesn't, you hit it. We will be right back with the rest of the story. If you are enjoying this drama, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, drop a comment below telling me which city you are listening from. Every comment helps this story reach more people. Thank you so much. While my family was busy playing pretend in the Garden District, I was building a titan in the real world. Aegis Dynamics had grown from a 2-person operation into a global leader in cybersecurity. We occupied the top 3 floors of the tallest tower in New Orleans. I had 150 employees, contracts with the Department of Defense, and a valuation that was approaching unicorn status, $1 billion. My life was a study in schizophrenia. At 8 a.m., I would drive my dented Honda Civic to a parking garage 3 blocks away from my office. I would park on the lower level, put on a pair of oversized sunglasses, and walk to my building. I would take the private elevator to the penthouse suite. There, I was Ms. Walsh. I commanded rooms full of seasoned executives. I made decisions that shifted stock markets. My lawyer, Vaughn, a man who terrified most judges, took notes when I spoke. The acquisition offer from Oracle is tempting, Vaughn had told me last week. But you are worth more, Sutton. Your IP is the gold standard. I know, I had replied, signing a document that authorized a $5 million R&D expansion. We hold. At 6 p.m., I would reverse the transformation. I would take off the blazer, put on the hoodie, drive the Civic back to the Garden District, and walk into a house where I was treated like a dim-witted child. Sutton, the Wi-Fi is slow again, Tinsley would complain without looking up. Did you forget to pay the bill? I will check the router, I would say, subservient and quiet. Declan, my business partner, thought I was insane. Why do you do it? He asked me constantly. You could buy that house 10 times over. You could kick them out. Why do you let them treat you like the help? Because it is the only home I have, I confessed. And if they knew the truth, they wouldn't love me. They would just love the money. At least now, I know exactly where I stand. But I was wrong. I didn't know where I stood. I thought I was tolerated. I didn't realize I was being targeted. The betrayal started a year ago, disguised as brotherly bonding. Barrett had been fired from his third sales job. He came to me, humbled for once. Sutton, he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. I have an idea. Cybersecurity is hot right now. I want to start a company. But I don't know the tech. Can you teach me? I was touched. For the first time in forever, my big brother was asking for my expertise, not my wallet. I spent 3 weekends with him. I explained the basics of firewall architecture. He nodded, took notes, and seemed genuinely interested. I need a demo, he said eventually. Something to show investors. Just a proof of concept. I should have said no. But I wanted him to succeed. I wanted him to have his own thing so he would stop leeching off me. So, I wrote a module. It was a simplified version of the Sentinel protocol, the core engine of Aegis. I stripped out the enterprise features, but the kernel was still my proprietary code. Here, I said, handing him the flash drive. This will show them how the packet filtration works. But Barrett, this is just for demo. You can't sell this. It is my IP. Of course, he promised. Just for show. He lied. He took that code, hired a cheap freelance developer to slap a flashy dashboard on it, and called it the Ironclad system. He incorporated a company. He started pitching to venture capitalists. He didn't build a product. He built a facade on top of my foundation. I didn't know he was selling it until 3 weeks ago. That was when Declan walked into my office, his face pale. You need to see this, Declan said, dropping a thick document on my glass desk. It was a confidential due diligence report from a venture capital firm in San Francisco. Declan had a friend there who leaked it to him because the tech looked suspiciously familiar. I flipped through the pages. There it was. Barrett's company pitch. He claimed to have invented a novel, AI-driven encryption layer. I turned to page 47 of the technical analysis. The VC's technical team had analyzed the code repository Barrett provided. Warning, the core kernel contains cryptographic signatures matching the Sentinel architecture associated with Aegis Dynamics. Ownership is unclear. Recommended action, obtain full IP assignment and waiver from the original author before funding. My heart stopped. Barrett wasn't just using my code for a demo. He was selling it. He was raising $90 million based on my invention. And he had claimed he wrote it. The investors weren't stupid. They saw the digital fingerprints. They knew Barrett didn't write it. That was why they demanded the signature. They needed to clean up the crime scene before they cut the check. He is trying to steal the company, Sutton, Declan said quietly. If you sign a waiver, he could theoretically sue us for using the code you wrote. He could destroy Aegis. I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, it was breathtaking. He wasn't just asking for money this time. He was asking me to slit my own throat so he could wear my blood like a scarf. Get Vaughn, I told Declan. We need to prepare. For the last 3 weeks, I had been waiting. I knew the request would come. I knew he would try to get me to sign something. I just didn't know he would do it over a duck dinner, with my parents cheering him on. And I certainly didn't expect him to ground me for refusing. The following account comes from the legal depositions and security logs gathered after the event. Saturday morning at the Walsh residence usually began at 10 o'clock. But this Saturday, Barrett was up at 8. He was furious. The Wi-Fi was still working, I hadn't cut it yet. I wanted the timing to be perfect, but he hadn't received the email notification that I had signed the document. He stomped up the stairs to my room. He kicked the door. Sutton. Open up. I am not playing games. He kicked it again, harder, cracking the frame. When there was no answer, he shoulder-checked the door, bursting into the room. He expected to find me crying in bed. Or perhaps sulking at my computer. Instead, he found a vacuum. The room was pristine. The bed was stripped. The closet door was open, revealing empty hangers. The desk was bare, no computer, no drives, no papers. What the? Barrett muttered. He ran downstairs. Mom. Dad. She is gone. They were in the kitchen. Mom was making coffee. Who was gone? Sutton? She probably went to the store. She will be back. Her stuff is gone, Mom. Her computer. Her clothes. Before they could process this, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a friend. It was Vaughn. Vaughn stands 6'3". He wears suits that cost more than Barrett's car. He doesn't smile. Dad opened the door. Can I help you? Richard Walsh? Vaughn asked, his voice like gravel. I am Vaughn Sterling, representing Miss Sutton Walsh. Representing her? Dad laughed nervously. Is she in trouble? Did she get a speeding ticket? Vaughn stepped into the foyer without being invited. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. Ms. Walsh has retained my firm to handle the separation of her assets from this household, effective immediately. Barrett came running into the hall. What is this? Where is she? Tell her to get her ass home and sign the papers. Vaughn turned to Barrett. He looked at him like he was a stain on the carpet. Mr. Barrett Walsh, Vaughn said. I have here a cease and desist order regarding the unauthorized use of Aegis Dynamics intellectual property. We have also notified your prospective investors that the Ironclad Code is stolen property. The funding round is dead. If you attempt to use, sell, or modify that code again, we will file federal charges for corporate espionage. Barrett went white. What? Aegis Dynamics? That is a billion-dollar company. Sutton works in IT support. Sutton is Aegis Dynamics, Vaughn corrected coldly. She is the founder and majority shareholder. And you, sir, are in a lot of trouble. The realization didn't hit them all at once. It came in waves of horror. Founder? Mom whispered. But, she drives a Honda. She prefers privacy, Vaughn said. Privacy she no longer requires. He handed Dad another envelope. This is a notice of immediate termination of all voluntary financial support. As of 3 a.m. this morning, Ms. Walsh has ceased all payments related to this property and its inhabitants. She can't do that. Tinsley shrieked from the stairs. We have bills. The mortgage is due on the 1st. Then I suggest you find a way to pay it, Vaughn said. Good day. He walked out. The real panic set in on Monday morning. At 9 a.m., the lights in the house went out. The air conditioning groaned and died. The silence was sudden and oppressive. Check the breaker. Dad yelled. Barrett checked his phone to call the power company. I have no service, he said, tapping the screen. My data is off. Mine too, Tinsley cried. They gathered in the living room, sweating in the rising heat. Dad tried to use the landline. Dead tone. I had timed it perfectly. The family plan for the cell phones was under my name. I had reported the devices lost and cancelled the lines. The electricity account was in my name. I ordered a disconnect. Barrett drove to a coffee shop to get Wi-Fi. He tried to log into the bank account to pay the power bill. Access denied. He tried the credit cards. Card cancelled. He called the bank. They told him that since the primary account holder, me, had removed her authorization, the joint accounts were frozen pending an audit. And since the credit cards were supplementary cards on my account, they were void. They had zero access to cash. They had zero credit. And they had zero income. I sat in my office, watching the logs on my screen. I saw the failed login attempts. I saw the desperate pings. "It is done," I told Declan. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I can finally breathe," I said. Wednesday was the day the neighborhood officially found out. In the Garden District, appearance is everything. A tow truck is a scandal. 2 tow trucks is a tragedy. 3 is a comedy. I sent 3. Since the leases on the vehicles were in my name, and I had defaulted on the payments, by canceling them, I voluntarily called the leasing company and told them to come collect their property. At noon, a flatbed truck backed into the driveway. Tinsley ran out of the house, screaming, "What are you doing? Get away from my Range Rover." "Paperwork says repossession, ma'am," the driver said, hooking up the chains. "You can't take it. My purse is in there. You can get it out, but the car goes." As she was sobbing on the lawn, clutching her Louis Vuitton bag, a second truck arrived for Dad's Mercedes. Neighbors were peering through their curtains. Some were boldly standing on their porches, watching the show. Mrs. Higgins next door was actually filming it on her iPad. Barrett tried to block the driveway with his body. "This is a mistake. My sister pays for these. Call Sutton Walsh." "We did," the driver said. "She authorized the pickup." That was the dagger. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. But the worst blow came for Barrett personally. His investors, having received Vaughn's letter, didn't just pull the funding. They demanded an audit of the seed money they had already given him, money he had spent on marketing, aka dinners and trips. They were threatening to sue him for fraud. He sat on the front steps, watching the cars roll away, his head in his hands. He was ruined. His reputation in the startup scene was incinerated. He wasn't the wunderkind anymore, he was the thief who got caught. I watched none of this. I didn't need to see it. Vaughn updated me via text. "Vaughn, assets secured. Vehicles in transit. House foreclosure proceedings initiated by the bank due to cross-default clauses. Sutton, thank you, Vaughn." By Thursday, the silence from my end was driving them insane. I had a burner phone that I used for family emergencies. I turned it on for 10 minutes just to see. 37 voicemails. 112 text messages. I played the first one. It was Dad. "Sutton, honey, please. This has gone too far. We are sitting in the dark. The food in the fridge is spoiling. Call me." The next one was Barrett. "You think you are smart? You are going to jail for this. You can't just cut us off. I will sue you." Then Tinsley. "Sutton, I am sorry about the dress comment. Really? Can we just talk? I need to get to an appointment and I have no car." Then Mom. "Sutton, the neighbors are talking. It is so embarrassing. Please, just pay the power bill. We can discuss the contract later." They still didn't get it. They thought this was a negotiation. They thought I was holding out for an apology so I could turn the tap back on. They didn't understand that the tap was broken. The pipes were ripped out. The well was poisoned. I didn't reply. I blocked the numbers again. I spent that evening in my penthouse. I cooked a simple pasta dinner. I drank a glass of wine that cost $20, and it tasted better than the $200 bottle Dad drank. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't worrying about their crisis. I wasn't calculating if I had enough liquidity to cover Barrett's gambling debt or Tinsley's shopping spree. I was alone. And it was glorious. The end came 30 days later. Because I had triggered a default event on the mortgage, and because the house was technically underwater due to a second mortgage Dad had taken out secretly, which I had been paying, the bank moved fast. Vaughn explained that with the acceleration clause, the entire balance was due immediately. Obviously, they didn't have $2 million. The eviction notice was served. I didn't go to watch them move out. But Vaughn went to ensure they didn't take anything that belonged to the estate or items I had personally purchased and retained receipts for, which was almost everything. According to Vaughn, it was a pathetic scene. They couldn't afford professional movers. Barrett and Dad were hauling boxes into a rented U-Haul. Tinsley was sitting in the cab of the truck, refusing to help, crying behind sunglasses. Dad tried to take the large oil painting from the foyer, an antique I had bought at auction for $15,000. That stays, Vaughn told him. This has been in the family for. Dad started to lie. Receipt dated August 2021, paid by Sutton Walsh, Vaughn read from his clipboard. Put it back. Dad slumped. He put the painting down. He looked around the empty hallway. Where is she? He asked Vaughn. Does she even care? She cared for 8 years, Mr. Walsh, Vaughn replied. You gave her every reason to stop. They left the key under the mat, exactly where I had left mine. 6 months have passed since that night. New Orleans is a small town in many ways. Word gets around. The Garden District Walsh family is no more. Dad and Mom are living in a 2-bedroom apartment off Jefferson Highway, near the airport. It is a loud, busy road. Dad got a job as a greeter at a hardware store. It is minimum wage. He stands on his feet all day. Mom cleans houses. The irony is not lost on anyone. She cleans for some of the women she used to play bridge with. I hear she tells them she is doing it to stay active, but everyone knows the truth. Barrett and Tinsley didn't last. The moment the money evaporated, so did their love. Tinsley filed for divorce 2 weeks after the eviction. She moved back in with her parents in Mississippi. Barrett is in bad shape. The investor sued him for fraud. He avoided jail time by pleading no contest, but he has a felony record now and a massive restitution debt. He works at a car wash. As for me? I still drive my Honda Civic. But now, I drive it to a home that is truly mine. I haven't spoken to them. Not a single word. I saw Mom once, last week. I was at the grocery store, a regular one, not the high-end organic market she used to force me to shop at. I was buying apples. I turned the corner and there she was. She looked older. Her hair wasn't dyed anymore, the gray was showing. She was wearing a faded t-shirt. She saw me. She froze. For a moment, I thought she would scream. Or turn away. Instead, her eyes filled with tears. She took a step toward me. Sutton, she breathed. I didn't move. I just watched her. We miss you, she said. We are struggling, honey. Dad's back is bad. Barrett is, it is hard. She waited for me to offer. She waited for me to pull out the checkbook. The old programming. I am sorry to hear that, I said politely. Is that it? She cried softly. We are your family. How can you be so cold? You have so much, and we have nothing. We lost our lives, Sutton. I looked at this woman who had left when my brother grounded me. You didn't lose your life, Mom, I said, my voice steady and calm. You just lost mine. I bought you an illusion for 8 years. Now you are just living the life you actually earned. I turned my cart around and walked away. Sutton, she called after me. Sutton, please. I kept walking. I didn't look back. I am writing this from my office on the 48th floor. The sun is setting over the Mississippi River, turning the water to gold. I signed a new contract today. A partnership with a European defense firm. It will ensure Aegis Dynamics dominates the market for the next decade. I looked at the signature line. Sutton Walsh. That signature is worth billions. And it belongs to me. Not to Barrett. Not to the family legacy. To me. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I wonder if I was too harsh. I wonder if I should have just refused to sign and left it at that. Did I need to burn it all down? Then I remember the folder sliding across the table. I remember the laughter. I remember the feeling of being small in a room full of people who were supposed to make me feel big. They wanted me to be grounded? Fine. I am grounded. I am grounded in reality. I am grounded in my own worth. And I am never letting anyone take flight at my expense again. Looking back at the ruins of what used to be my family, I sometimes wonder. Was I too harsh? Did they deserve to lose absolutely everything because of one contract, or was I just waiting for an excuse to finally cut the cord? You tell me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed seeing justice served cold, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I have plenty more stories from the archives of family drama coming your way.